Is Washington Post national political reporter Abby Phillip, and from Reno, Nevada, MSNBC political analyst John Ralston. And John, I want to go right to you on that last point, because I did ask Senator Reid about this charge that the process at the Nevada convention was unfair. You've written a lot about this. Tell us, what was the bone of contention? What is it that Sanders supporters were claiming that the chairman of the Nevada State Party did wrong to them?
Well, there's a lot of minutia that went on, of course, Joy, and it was operating at two levels. Some of the people there were locals who wanted to take over the state party, wanted more voice in the state party. They came into that convention loaded for bear. They believed that Roberta Lang, the chairwoman of the state Democratic Party, was essentially an agent of the Hillary Clinton campaign, was not going to be fair to them. They started complaining very early on. After the initial credentials committee, you heard Harry Reid talk about the credentials committee, came out with a report that said that Clinton had essentially won the convention already by having more people there. There was a big voice vote to move forward. The Sanders people were louder, but that's not how these things work. Roberta Lang knew that the Clinton people, all voting en masse, had more people there. It degenerated right from there, Joy, and to the chaos that ensued with Barbara, who came on shortly afterward. Harry Reid alluded to that, too, to speak for Hillary Clinton. She was greeted with booing and epithets hurled at her. They put up a Bernie Sanders sign in front of the camera so she wouldn't be on the big screen. And then everyone knows that later on what happened with the Bernie Sanders folks rushing the stage and the chaos that ensued. And the fact that security at a major Las Vegas hotel, the Paris Hotel, did not feel comfortable and shut the thing down. That tells you everything you need to know. Yeah, and the other issue that I think a lot of Sanders supporters need to understand is just how many people were in the room. And as you mentioned, John Ralston, a voice vote doesn't just mean who's louder. It means who has more people, right? And the numbers that were put out by the Nevada Democratic Party shows that Hillary Clinton's campaign filled 98% of their available seats. There were 27 delegate seats left vacant by the Clinton side, but the Bernie Sanders side only filled 78% of their seats, meaning that they were minus 462 people. So they were actually understaffed even from what they'd had in the county elections. And so, John, at the end of the day, had there been a head count, had Roberta Lang decided rather than do a voice vote, she's going to do a head count from the floor, what would it have changed the outcome? Well, yeah, let's throw aside all of the stuff that the Sanders campaign is putting out now about the unfairness of the rules, etc. If they had taken the time to do that, to take a head count, they still would have lost. But the key point that you just brought up, Joy, is what everyone seems to forget. The Sanders folks could have won that convention easily if they had taken advantage of what they did at the county conventions. They essentially had reversed what happened at the caucus on February 20th that Harry Reid referred to when Hillary won the state by 5 points. All they had to do was get their people there. None of this would have been impossible. And I have to tell you, one other thing that people are forgetting, and Harry Reid said this to you, is that he was intent, despite having endorsed Hillary Clinton, to make sure this was a fair process. Not just because to be fair to Bernie Sanders, but because Harry Reid is very worried that Nevada is going to lose its early caucus status. And if the integrity of the caucus is called into question, he considers that a direct assault both on him and the caucus in Nevada and the ability of the state to retain that. So they did not put their fingers on the scales. And the bottom line is if Bernie Sanders had filled those 462 delegate slots, didn't matter who was the loudest, Bernie Sanders would have won that convention. Now, of course, Joy, let's not forget, we're talking about maybe switching 2 delegates in the overall scheme of things anyhow, but Bernie Sanders lost that convention. He and his folks just can't accept that it was fair. Yeah, absolutely, and I think you said Bernie would have won. Hillary would have won the convention, I think is what you're trying to say. And really, before I go to Abby, one last question to you, John. Our folks on Twitter are really fired up about this issue, and some Sanders supporters on Twitter are asking, did you actually see chairs being thrown, or can you, from your reporting, verify that chairs were actually thrown in the room? Yeah, I'm getting quite a lot of heat on Twitter. I've actually turned off my notifications for the first time ever. These people are quite emotional. Joy, no, I did not see chairs thrown, but I talked immediately afterwards to eyewitnesses who said chairs were thrown. There were people on stage. The executive director of the Democratic Party and his staff saw chairs being thrown. Why do people think this convention was shut down? But again, that is a distraction. There are plenty of people, eyewitnesses, who saw chairs thrown. That's a distraction by the Sanders people. They did rush rushed the stage. There was chaos. I had never used the word violence. I'm not sure there was actual violence, although there's video of people on the floor. I don't know how they got on the floor because of the melee that occurred. But I never said anybody was hit by chairs. People were upset. Eyewitnesses saw chairs being thrown. But again, I think they're focusing on that one thing to distract from a very simple fact, Joy. They lost. Yeah,
and I think that Roberta Lang definitely has those text messages and voicemails, and we definitely heard those. And there are some reporters who've actually spoken with some of the people who issued those threats.